Hello and welcome back to Technically Speaking. Happy Friday. I'm Dara. I have been nervous this week to do today's episode as it's a topic that I really struggled to wrap my head around when I first learned about it. But here we go. 2023 is our year of doing hard things, right? So today we are going to talk about RBAC, starting first with what it stands for. RBAC stands for Role-Based Access Control, quite a mouthful. It's a method of restricting access to a computer system or network or application based on the roles assigned to that individual user. Okay, that sounds good, but it's also a little confusing. And what's the difference between that and giving each person their own permissions to whatever they need? When we set up RBAC access to resources, it's granted based on the user's job function rather than their individual identity. So each user is assigned to a role, which defines that set of permissions or access rights that they have. For example, a user with a role of administrator may have full access to all resources, while a user with a role of guest may have limited access. Great example when I'm talking about RBAC is sharing a Google Doc. When I send my document to Nick or Joe or Sarah, I give them a role like commenter or editor. That role allows them to do certain activities, but not others in my document. When we're talking about RBAC for an application in Uncork, we're doing the same thing. So what are all the parts of RBAC? And there's a few, but there are three that I think are most important when we're speaking about the roles in RBAC. The first is the user. The user is the individual who interacts with the system and is requiring access to one or more resources. Next, we have their role. A role is a collection of permissions or access rights that define a user's job function or responsibility within the organization. Each role is then associated with a set of permissions or rights that determine what actions that user can perform. And lastly, we already alluded to it, we have their permission or access. It's the right or privilege that grants that user access to a particular resource or action. Now, I know what you're thinking, because I was thinking it too. When I go into Uncork's administration settings, I see something about groups too. What are those? When we're thinking about RBAC, groups are collections of users who share a common set of permissions or access rights. A group can be assigned to a role, which defines the set of permissions that all members of that group are granted. Assigning roles to groups simplifies the administration of access control, as it allows administrators to manage access rights for multiple users at once, rather than individually. For example, an administrator can assign the role of read-only to a group of users who need to view a particular set of resources, rather than assigning it to each person individually. Groups can also be nested or hierarchical, meaning that the group can contain other groups as members. This allows for even greater flexibility and scalability in access control, as the roles and permissions can be assigned to groups at various levels in that hierarchy. Now, we've talked in general, but let's talk about RBAC at Uncork. In Uncork, our RBAC is implemented using a hierarchical structure of roles and permissions. The highest level in our system is the administrator role. They have access to all resources within the application. Below the system administrator role, we can add other roles, each specific to a set of permissions that define the resources users in that role can access. Uncork, in this way, allows organizations to define their own roles and own permissions based on their very specific needs. It allows organizations to create customized RBAC model that matches their internal processes and workflows. One of the key benefits of RBAC and Uncork is the ability to easily manage access to resources as roles and responsibilities change within the organization. For example, if a user changes departments or takes on a new role within the organization, Their access to resources within the Uncork application can be easily updated by modifying their role assignment. Another important part about RBAC at Uncork is that you have the option to implement RBAC for Express, meaning our end user applications, and for Designer, the Uncork UI to build applications. In Designer, you can determine who can edit, view, promote, etc., all the modules and applications on an environment, and even at a workspace level, allowing for security and separation when building applications, if they're for different teams or business units, or you just want to keep something to yourself. Lastly, what are some of the benefits of RBAC? I've talked about them generally, but let's dive a little deeper. RBAC has several benefits, including increased security, simplified administration, improved compliance. It allows administrators to manage access to resources in a centralized and efficient way, reducing the risk of unauthorized access or data breaches. Additionally, RBAC can help organizations comply with regulatory requirements by providing clear audit trail of who has access to what. Overall, RBAC is one of the key items in our Uncork application designs. It should be considered early in the design as a way to hand off applications from one department to another, way to make sure users can only access data they should be accessing, and a way to control your builds. I think RBAC is one of the coolest things that we have in Uncork, even if it did take me a long time to understand it. Next week, we'll be back and we'll be talking in a deeper dive about more technical topics. Can't wait to see you there.